Well, first of all, I guess we just wanted to say, it's first of all, hello everyone. We're just we're first of all glad that you could join our panel for today on development. And it's like this is Michael just talking, the voice you hear and the face you're seeing. But I think the key part of this panel and the goal, that you see in the, kind of in that last line of the first paragraph, that says like practical action steps you can take while staying home, which is the case we're in right now. It's like with everyone in an extended period of it's always funny. I always call this like a staycation. It's always been a dream of mine to have it. And I guess you have to be very careful what you wish for, because this is the last thing I want right now anymore. But, there are these, in this time and day and age, are these unique opportunities for us to work on making our creative industry stronger and our project stronger, and we all need to help each other out as we get through this. So if you see others on the call, particularly in the chat, as you see, there's a lot of people chatting on the right-hand side, and you could even do it privately. Feel free to reach out to them, to that private chat section too, because we don't have this opportunity, like in our last panels, to do that in-person networking. So this is the next best thing, but, we're all about helping our creative community, and that's what we're all about, kind of like as the saying goes, like, a rising tide raises all the ships. And, one of those tides that is raising us all up is actually the Writers Guild Foundation, who kindly sponsors this panel and has done so for the last few Business of Creating panels. So I just want to kind of pass on the audio baton to Dustin and Need from the Writers Guild Foundation to tell us a little about what they do before Jennifer, our beloved moderator, hey Jen, starts the panel. So Dustin and Need, just handing it over to you.
Yeah, hi. Typically I do these intros in our library, and so I kind of have to rework the spiel a little bit because right now we're all in quarantine. But I'm Dustin, the Events and Operations Coordinator for the Writers Guild Foundation. A couple of services, we're the nonprofit arm of the Writers Guild of America West. So a couple of services that we offer include events such as these that you're viewing right now. We have Zoom panels that we're hosting pretty much weekly that include interviews with different writers and industry insiders and executives. We also post all of our recordings right now on our blog, so all of the online conversations that we've been doing while we're all stuck inside during this pandemic, we post them on our blog for viewing at the end of every week. We also offer community outreach programs such as the Veterans Writing Project and the Visiting Writers Program. So like our Vets Writing Project, for example, brings in a class of military veterans to break into the screenwriting industry. And it's a year-long cohort where they're paired up with mentors within the WGA to work on their craft and pitch a project by the end of the year-long session. Our Visiting Writers Program, we send writers to colleges and universities. We also coordinate Skype sessions with those colleges and universities, so that can still happen while, again, everyone is sheltering at home. We also have a library, a screenwriting library that is typically open to the public, that has thousands and thousands of scripts of produced movies and TV shows. We are typically we're free and we're typically open to the public. Of course, right now we are closed, but that doesn't mean that our library staff isn't accessible. You could always reach out to them with inquiries at library@wgfoundation.org via email. We're also doing an ongoing series on our blog about how to format your spec script. So again, you can check that out on our website, and our website is wgfoundation.org. So you can learn more about everything about the foundation on our website. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Woohoo! All right, Dustin, thank you so much. And as Michael said, so happy that we're able to partner with you on this. Briefly, Michael and I, we are the Business of Creating. Look, it's us. And we're smiling because we love to do these panels. I'm a writer-producer. Michael is an entertainment marketing executive, to give us a little bit of background. And we are the ongoing live interactive panel series and Q&A with seasoned entertainment executives. Check it out. We've done 15 panels so far on a variety of topics, from financing, producing, marketing materials. And of course, today is all about how do I develop my project? What can I do to get ahead of the game? Give me some practical steps I can do while I'm forced to be sitting here with just the fan blowing. All right, having said that, Here we go, everybody. Get your pens, your papers, your everything ready so that you can take some notes. Business of Creating, welcome to our first virtual panel on development. Ladies and gentlemen, look who I have with me today. I am like the luckiest woman in the virtual space. First up, we have Tim Sullivan, everybody. Tim is the president of production and development at Emmett Furla Oasis Films. Emmett Furla Oasis knows exactly how fabulous Tim is. He started there as an intern right after university. They immediately hired him on as an assistant. Then, his knack for sourcing, evaluating, and improving material became extremely obvious. And boom, he was promoted to junior creative executive, then development executive. And in 2016, having produced a serious number of features for Emmett Furla Oasis, he was promoted to president. Hey! So Tim, he has served as producer on over 25 feature films, including the upcoming Mel Gibson film, Boss Level, as well as the Escape Plan series with Robert De Niro, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Dave Bautista, and Gina Carano. Tim has had the pleasure of working with top-tier filmmakers such as Stephen Frears, Peter Berg, Joe Carnahan, as well as Martin Scorsese on, you might have heard of these films, Silence and the Irishman. Everybody from your own home, welcome Tim Sullivan. Hey, Tim.
Hey, everybody. How are you? Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
We are going to learn so much from you. I'm so excited we're recording this so I can just listen again and again and again. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to, I don't know how we can top Tim, but we're coming right in hard and fast with Randy Greenberg, y'all. Randy, you see, is Randy is the executive producer of The Meg, among other amazing films. Check it out. He's the executive producer, and a past studio executive. Over the past 25 years, Randy has been involved in the greenlighting, marketing, and distribution of over 200 films. I think we can learn from this man, you guys. Let me see, his strategies have produced over $5 billion in theatrical box office. I know, right? So let me see, he's served as executive producer at the Greenberg Group, a global entertainment, content, and investment advisory and marketing distribution consultancy. Executive producing 3 feature films, Cowboys and Aliens, Dylan Dog, Dead of Night, and you may have heard of it, The Meg, which even up to like 30 minutes ago, y'all, was the still is number one worldwide box office US-China co-production, taking in over $530 million box office. Oh my goodness, yes please. Randy is currently working on several feature films, television series in development. And check it out, you guys, he also teaches a class at UCLA Extension, fall and spring quarters for entertainment studies, the business of entertainment. Everybody, welcome Randy Greenberg.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Randy.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. I'm so excited. You guys, I'm so excited to
I'm so embarrassed. It's so hard to listen, but thank you. That's kind.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Those are just a couple of highlights, everybody. You need to look this man up. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up next right here, Jean McDowell. Jean, as you see, is the SVP of marketing at Miramax. He is responsible for overseeing the marketing strategy for them, including promotions, partnerships, campaign development, communications, events, licensing and merchandising, and research. He serves as the key marketing executive for all their distributors, promotional partners, filmmakers, talent, and studios. Previous to Miramax, Jean worked at Lionsgate, where he played an instrumental role in development, acquisition, production, and theatrical releases of such films as, you may have heard of them, the Hunger Games franchise, the John Wick franchise, and Sicario, Wonder, and a personal fave, multi-Oscar and award winner, La La Land. I love, you guys, how we have all these different budget ranges going on. That's going to be so relevant to all of us today. Additionally, Jean is a founding partner of Brigade Marketing, a full-service entertainment marketing and publicity agency based in New York City. Everybody, welcome Jean! Yay! I know, we're used to having a nice round of applause. Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, last but definitely not least, it's Michael Fisk. Yay, Michael. Michael's my co-founder. I'm so lucky. He's my co-founder with our panel series, Business of Creating. Michael, as you know, is a senior marketing executive in the entertainment industry. He's spearheaded over 400 marketing campaigns for studios like Sony, Lionsgate, NBC Universal, Warner Brothers, and currently for MGM. Michael also runs Intermark, the international consulting practice focusing on helping filmmakers, producers, directors, and distributors with long-term marketing and strategy. As we all know, his passion is making your passion project succeed. Fun fact, his favorite marketing campaigns that he worked on are, you might have heard of it, the James Bond franchise. Yep. He's only worked on 5 of them, y'all, so I don't know if he knows what he's talking about. Really? And of course, he did La La Land. Hey, shout out to Jean there as well. And most recently, he worked on the Peanut Butter Falcon, the indie film starring Shia LaBeouf and Dakota Johnson. Welcome, Michael! Yay, everybody!
Thank you. It's always good to be here.
Yay!
It's good to be with all the panelists too. Randy, I think you have the dubious honor of being the only panelist at the Business of Creating to be on it twice. So very glad to have you here.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And then John, you know, we go way back, so it's always good seeing you. And then Tim, it's always a pleasure to meet you. And hopefully we get to meet in person, you know, because this video thing is just not the same.
Exactly. Exactly. So guys, yeah, again, thank you for taking the time. Let's dive right in, y'all. We only have an hour and we've got a lot to cover. We could do like a whole day of this stuff. Okay, so a quick review of some definitions. What is development? So, you know, basically like, let us see behind the curtain. We get all these terms and they all sound like, ooh, but help me out. Walk me through some of this stuff. What's development?
Tim.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just the process of the point where from my perspective, from when I receive a script to the time it starts shooting, and honestly, maybe a little bit beyond that, because there are always tweaks and changes to the script while you're shooting, more or less depending on the project. So I would say development starts with the writer having an idea, and next moves to selling the project, working with the producer, financier to get the project into either a state where it could be, you know, commercially viable or can land top talent or a top filmmaker, whatever, you know, the requirement is for a green light. And, you know, you might be implementing notes. If you're doing a rewrite or a polish, you might be implementing notes that have to do with the budget. You know, where are we going to shoot this? Your story takes place in Los Angeles, but for tax incentive purposes, we're going to shoot it in Puerto Rico or Ohio. You know, there are 50 locations in this budget, in this script, but due to our resources, we can only afford, let's say, 30 or so locations. We've got to try to combine some things and get creative. And then also, you might be working on just the creative aspects of the script. This character's arc is a little weak. You know, what's the purpose of this B storyline? Can we omit that entirely or kind of, you know, change it so that it's a bit more significant? So that's kind of the process for me. We might have a writer do some work on a character to gear it towards a certain actor that we're going after. For our company specifically, we work with Bruce Willis, a tremendous deal. I think we've done 18 or so movies with Bruce in various capacities, and a few of those are where he's the lead of the movie, and many others are where it's not quite a cameo, but it's a very specific kind of prescribed amount of pages that we need to satisfy both domestic and foreign distributors. So there might be a character that's in the script, let's say 10 pages, but our distributors want 22 pages, which will roughly equal about 22 minutes of screen time. So I'll tell the writer, okay, you know, you have this great character, Frank, but he's only in the script for 10 pages, and we really need him to be in the script for 22 pages. Also, he should probably be about 65 years old, and if he happens to be bald, that's okay too. So, you know, we kind of gear it towards a targeted piece of talent. That's
sorry, I'm going to jump in on you there, Tim,
Sure.
a little bit, because so then you were talking about like a polish versus a rewrite. And since
Yeah.
we have that on there, I'd love to jump in and go, whoop, quick definition, please.
I meant to actually go on the WGA website, and because I know there are very strict definitions between a polish and a rewrite.
What did we mean to you in a practical sense? When somebody
In a
walks in the
practical
room and you
sense, a
say,
rewrite is a very substantial amount of work being done to the script.
and is that
I'd
because
say, probably you're not tweaking a character here. You're not going in to just kind of do some dialogue work. It's really you might be restructuring the script as a whole. It might be a page one rewrite, whereas a polish is, we want a little bit of character work. We want to, reduce the budget by toning down some of the action, or we want to actually add more action into it. And so you're doing a finite amount of work as opposed to a great deal of work.
Okay, so the rewrite then, just to kind of clarify for myself, that would be because, suddenly Bruce Willis is in it. And so we need to tailor that more directly for him and his style. So it's no longer a, 7-foot African basketball player, for instance, female.
No, for me, the definition truly has to do with the amount of work that's required to accomplish the goal of the work. So it's like if you're not just tweaking a couple of scenes. So in the Bruce Willis example, he might only be in 10 scenes, let's say. So you might be only diving into those 10 scenes and working on that specifically for his character. Whereas a rewrite would be, I'm trying to think of a specific, it might be like, the third act is a complete mess, which I would put much more gently if I were actually speaking to a writer.
Yeah, those are the code words. We should have put code words for the definition.
Maybe that's exactly what you should say. It's a mess, and we got to fix it.
Sometimes I might say that, but so that might have, if the third act is a complete mess and you're rewriting the entire third act, you're kind of throwing everything that you have into the trash and totally restructuring that last act, which of course I'm sure will have implications in the first two acts as well. That's a big overhaul of the script, whereas a polish is truly, a polish. You're just taking the rock and you're taking a little rag to it and you're buffing out the edges and making it look extra pretty. So,
well, there you have it. We all need to know how to look extra pretty. So, all right, IP versus pitch versus spec script. What?
Well, I think Tim's got a great position, being that he's running development and distribution for a particular entity that kind of controls, to a certain extent, all the movies that it makes, and it has its own financing and it has its various distribution deals. On the other side of that, the majority of us actually don't sit in that sweet catbird seat, and we sit with an idea of what is somebody looking for? What do they want? And as writers, you're writing something you think is great, or you think will be great, or could be great, or what is close to your heart. And all of it's, in the end, it's about what can you sell and where can you sell it. And so an IP, IP, intellectual property versus a pitch versus a spec script really comes down to what is it to begin with. And most of, people in seats like where in positions where, like Tim, or the heads of the studios or the production executives of the studios or the streamers or where have you, like they're looking for things that they're looking for projects that come with pre-marketing, right? I mean, John can talk about this, ad nauseum, I'm sure, or far better than that. But it's the idea that, the marketing departments and the distribution departments and the internal departments of the studios and the streamers, they want to be able to sell something that the audience kind of knows and has an understanding about already. So intellectual property is something that previously existed in a different medium, a toy, a book, a comic book, a graphic novel, something, and then you're making a piece of filmed entertainment out of it, whether it's a film or television. I'm probably not telling, this is probably all way too elementary for all of you, versus a pitch versus a spec script. Some places are willing to look at pitches, but usually from specific writers that they want to be in business with, or specific producers they want to be in business with, versus a spec script, which is you're going to write it, get paid nothing, to write it, and then you're going to send it out hoping that somebody likes it. But a lot of times it's really about, when is it right to send it out? Have you kind of sent it around to your internal team, whoever that is, friends, family, relatives, representatives, to kind of get feedback and made it better before you send it out for somebody to take a look at? But I find, as an executive producer and a producer, that the majority of the times when I'm going out either to find financing for a project or find a home for the project, that the best thing to start with is something that somebody knows something about, rather than a spec. Only because the spec market is so small compared to the purchase of everything else.
Okay, let's see.
Can I just ask one thing on this? Is that I wanted to understand more about, like, also like a manuscript. So for example, when Randy, you're talking about IP, you know, an existing IP, let's say a book that's coming out, it has been out, and you have the rights to it.
Sure.
Where, and I know maybe this is more for Tim too, is that if you have like an IP where you have the rights to a book and you have the book itself, the written word, the manuscript, where do you come in when it comes down to the scripting? Like, do you pitch the book and then you say, I'm going to do the script, or do you actually write the script and then you pitch the script, but say it's based on the IP? Does that make sense?
Yep.
For we typically, I mean, it really depends on the specific project and how recognizable that piece of IP is to begin with. If it's, you know, if it's an incredible story about a longshoreman from, you know, the early 20th century that no one's ever heard of, I would probably want to see the script spec'd out in that case, because it would be hard for us to go to one of our distributors and take that pitch and say, hey, we've got this amazing book that, you know, that has low sales numbers that we'd like to develop, and we'd like to get some kind of a minimum guarantee from you, or, you know, guaranteed theatrical window, however, you know, whatever it is that we're looking for, they're never going to engage with that. So I would need to see the script in that case. If it's, you know, hey, I've landed the rights to Batman somehow, then you'd come to me and I'd say, okay, well, let's get this going.
So it makes sense. Yeah, because I'm in a situation where we have the book, you know, but not the script, and we're trying to market the movie, but it's not based on the script yet, you know. So it's like we're really, really early in development.
Yeah, and what's interesting where marketing and research kind of comes into that, at least from a studio perspective, when it comes to IP, like when we're approached as a studio with a pitch or an IP, obviously we want to, like, shrewdly from a business sense, we want to understand really what is the value associated with that IP, and how do we establish that value? Is it book sales? Is it readership? Is it that the author has a huge following on social? And how does that impact how the you know, the film or the series or whatever, how does that impact how we develop it? But then also, you know, once you start getting into the studio machine, a little, maybe I shouldn't use the term machine, but sort of if you start finding yourself having conversations with a studio about developing a property, sometimes, like Mike, like you said, you will only have a book. And so there will be times where the studio will then take that property and do some sort of analysis, right? Where they, and sometimes it's just quite simply shooting from the hip. And sometimes it's a full on, brand or franchise study where you take the book and you sort of distill the story and different elements down, and you ask moviegoers, okay, have you read this book? Great. If you've read this book, what are your favorite parts about this book? What are your least favorite parts about this book? And then if you've never read this book before, here's the story and here are some elements about it. What are the most attractive things? What do you think you want to see in this movie? And, and then so the deliverable is this sort of, it's a report that says, hey, look, and I'm using Hunger Games, even though this isn't the way that process worked, but it's like, okay, do you care about the love triangle between Katniss and Peeta, and I'm forgetting the other character, or do you care more about seeing Katniss like take down, the Capitol. Okay, if you have to choose between the two, what's more important? Do you like that it has violence, or does that make you squeamish? And if you like the movie and you like the story, but you don't really want to see the violence, then okay, we'll take that into consideration as the script is being written, and maybe we'll be careful about violence. Or maybe you're like, no, I really want to see those poor little kids get annihilated. And in that case, then it's okay, then you steer in that direction. And I say all of that with the caveat that research, especially in the development process, I think should be looked at as sort of directional, but we shouldn't necessarily live or die by it, because there are so many flaws in research. But it can sometimes kind of tell you which way the wind is blowing and which direction you may want to go, but it's not going to give you the GPS coordinates. That's where the talent of folks like Tim and Randy come in, where they say, okay, that's information, that's interesting learnings and some interesting insights, but then, okay, let's figure out how to make that actionable, and or like say, thank you for that information, I don't think it's relevant.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you guys. That kind of brings us into our, as you can see, we have free-flowing discussions here. But so I really liked how you made this point in one of our previous discussions, John, about thinking of opportunities for different revenue streams. That kind of ties in with the IP, maybe somewhat backwards, because maybe you don't have the rights to Barbie or something like that. But, you're going, hey, this is also going to be great for lunchboxes and backpacks and blah, blah, blah. And can we speak more about that?
Yeah, Jen, I don't think it's about lunchboxes and backpacks, but what I think it's about is that we live in a business that is all that in the last decade, it's all about universes. Create your own universe. Mm-hmm. And so it's the idea that if you've created a world for the sake of discussion, which was in the trades just about an hour ago, which is Lionsgate is finally going to make a Now You See Me 3. Smart idea, should have done it ages ago. Because they've created this really cool world of the Four Horsemen with the billionaire, millionaire, and the insurance companies, and this being able to fly around the world. They kind of created this world that they can easily move certain characters out and put new characters in. And that's kind of the idea of other revenue opportunities. Like, can you branch this out and make it to a TV series or a short form series? Why isn't there, why wasn't there? And now you can see me playing cards that were sold at, why didn't they do something simple like that? That's the kind of stuff that's the easy stuff. Then, I'm working on a project where it's set in medieval Japan, and it could be made into a graphic novel series. And it originally is pitched as a film, as a trilogy of films, but we've kind of re-toggled it into potentially a television series because there's some other competing projects out there as well. So it's really about, can you take the IP you have, and is there other revenue from it that is synonymous to it, not after the fact, which is lunchboxes and things are really after the fact, because somebody else is going to bring you that money, because somebody else has to want to do that. We had that issue on Meg. One of the reasons I was brought on to the Meg was to not only bring in distribution, which I helped with, but also to do licensing and merchandising, which is the ancillary product. Nobody wanted a license to the Meg. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody cared. We were just a movie with a big shark until it became a hit. And now, when we do Meg 2, we'll have an ability to do licensing. But nobody wanted to do it on the first movie because it wasn't a franchise. It wasn't anything. It was just a big shark, and everybody thought it was going to be a disaster. So, sure enough, thankfully, that's not what happened. But it's really about the organic story, and is there more to it that you can, make money off of? Is there something else to it that it can be exploited in different media?
That's a really good point. I mean, for our company, we had always been kind of on the hunt for the next franchise, and we used Hunger Games and Twilight as kind of examples of the holy grail Those happen to be based on, you know, very successful book franchises first, but we, you know, we were always looking for material that could feasibly become a franchise. And thankfully we found that with Escape Plan, and that series. Even though the sequels have not been theatrical, it's still been extremely lucrative for us. And just the fact that there's recognizable IP with Sylvester Stallone and now Dave Bautista is really good business. And, you know, we were hoping that Two Guns was going to be that franchise, and the movie did well, but it didn't do it exceedingly well. And maybe it's something we'll work down the line, but having a story or a project or a spec, whatever phase of development it's in, that could be pitched as a potential franchise is, I think, a valuable thing.
I love those comments. Thank you both. Sorry, it's my turn for a second. But I really appreciate it. I really appreciated you guys. Thank you, Andy. I appreciated you clarifying, you know, different revenue versus ancillary opportunities. And, you know, again, kind of, okay, we're defining those, and we're also saying, hey, these are things to keep in mind so that when you come to talk to Tim about your period romance script, since obviously they don't do those, y'all, don't send them those. So then, yeah, you can, you know, walk in, you know, guns cocked and loaded and ready to go. So you guys, quickly finishing up our early development slide here. So you were talking about bringing in the IP. So can we talk about pitch or submission to production? What are we looking at with that? What else do you look for in a project in addition to these potential franchises? And, you know, the quick review of, you know, to whom, why, when, how should you be sending stuff out once you're wanting to get it to the development companies or the production companies?
I'll dive in, I guess, for a second. So I think the best advice I can give is to be very targeted about who you're trying to send your project to. Jennifer used the example of a period romance because I brought it up on kind of one of our earlier conversations. You know,
your favorite
if
genre?
somebody sends me a period romance or says, "Can I send you your period romance?" There's a really good chance that I'll read that email, get distracted by something else, and probably even forget to respond to the email. Mostly because I'm very disorganized and not very polite. But
he has kids, Joe. He has kids.
That was the best answer you could ever give.
Great.
The most polite way to say no.
Right. But so if you just go on IMDb and you look at the kinds of movies that we have made, you know, you'll see that we've made kind of very masculine, male-driven action movies. Generally, they will star some aging, you know, former or still current action star. So it's to get me to look at your project quicker. It's usually easiest to say, hey, I've got, you know, a thriller that, you know, could be right for Bruce Willis in a supporting role. And, you know, there are limited locations and it would be easy to shoot anywhere. And that would catch my attention. Obviously, you want to pitch the story. Aside, so we kind of have two different slates. So for our programmer down the middle commercial action thriller slate, that would be the thing to say. Otherwise, you might have your rep, or you could email me directly, a really great, unique idea. It's got to be something that's out of the box, and it might grab me right away, or it might not. But so I think that's kind of it. I think having something very unique, which, yeah, I mean, easier said than done, or to just have something that is so right for the company that it'll be hard for them to say no to the submission. So once you've written your script or you have your idea, really put the time into researching the companies that have made those kinds of projects before, have a track record of making those kinds of projects, so you can be very targeted in your approach. That's my, I guess, most basic piece of advice.
And Tim, I have kind of a clarification question on that. So when you're saying, hey, I've got this script, it's an action thriller, it's good for Bruce Willis' supporting role. So you've obviously done your homework. You're letting them know, they're letting you know that.
Right.
You wanted me to even go further and say, hey, it would be similar in style to films X, Y, and Z that are also,
Sure.
So that's kind of a well done you type of point to add in, or?
Yeah. I mean, I think use whatever information you can to get the executive interested in your project. Like, why do they want to read this project aside from the 6 other that have come in the last 3 hours? And that's not really an exaggeration. That's the amount of projects that will come into our company on a half daily basis, depending on the day. Yeah. So you really have to make it stick out. And I'm not saying research the company to kind of stoke the ego of whoever you're trying to send it to. You want to cut through the fat. Like, you want to stand out and be as attractive as possible. And that's kind of,
and to that point, Tim, it's not about sort of puffing up the ego of the person working at the company. It's also that in your day-to-day business, I would assume that outside of people who are sort of maybe newer to this whole world, you're very accustomed to dealing with, consummate professionals who already know, okay, I got it. Tim is my guy if I've got sort of a mature action movie star movie. So you're already sort of tuned into that. So if you're just sort of cutting your teeth in this business, you want to seem as buttoned up or sort of on, ready to play as possible. So I think that's part of it too, in doing your research.
Absolutely. Yeah, seeming professional is a very big thing. Like, if the email comes off as amateurish, I just don't have the time to deal with somebody that is coming across as an amateur, because I don't have the time to I mean, I can develop projects, but I can't develop people at this stage, so
that's what a manager's for.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And everybody's got to start somewhere. So that's no knock on any position that anyone's in. It's just, there's only so much time, and, the ultimate goal is to make money. And to do that, I think having a professional demeanor and presentation is really important.
Yeah. I mean, and there's some chat going on around, and I'm watching the chats, but you want to submit your projects, no matter what they are, through your representatives. None of us look at unsolicited material. So if you contact me on LinkedIn and you send me a log line and a script, like, I just respond with, I don't look at unsolicited material, and I delete it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind enough actually to say I don't look at it, but we only look at it from an attorney, an agent, a manager, from the right representatives. And to go along with what both John and Tim have said, like, again, really researching the company to make sure that whatever it is that you have goes to the right executive at the right company is really important. Netflix has, somebody for action half hour and action hour, and, and they're different people, and you can't, if you send it to the wrong person, nobody pays attention. So you really need to make sure that it's going to the right person, and preferably through your representative. But if you're doing your own, sending, preferably find an attorney at least who can send your stuff for you. But make sure that what you're sending goes to the right person at the right company. That's really important, because otherwise you're wasting your time and you're wasting their time, and you don't want them to remember you for wasting their time. That's for sure.
Well, and not to belabor the point, but just to piggyback off of that really briefly, like, every movie studio I've ever worked at, in my contract and or in my employment agreement, it actually says I am not allowed to take unsolicited submissions, and that's for legal reasons, because what could happen is, say you send me a script and it's for a horror movie about a clown that kills kids, and then I read it and I'm like, it's not a good script. But then we get another script that, and it comes from somewhere else, and it's about a clown that kills kids. The premise is somewhat the same, but really it's innately a different movie, and it's got all these other things going for it, and we make the movie, that opens up my company to potential litigation, because they're going to look at, someone could come back and say, well, hey, I pitched you that idea, and you ended up taking that idea and making it with someone else, when in fact that's not what really happened. So that's why, development executives and studio executives and producers have to be careful about, there does need to be a little bit more of a buttoned up system. It's not just about like, I'm too busy or important for you. It's really because of the way the business works. There's a certain protocol.
Those
John,
are
that's right.
theoretical
You're
situations.
so
That's
right.
happened to us a number of times. So like on Escape Plan, for example, we were being sued in, I think, Romania. And I don't think that lawsuit is even finished. And last year, we made a movie called Force of Nature, and a young writer accused us of stealing his script, even though it clearly was a very different concept, and I had received the script for the movie that we had made a year prior to another exec having read another similar project. So it just happens all the time. So we want to protect ourselves. And also, honestly, it does protect you as a writer, because there are companies that don't operate in legitimate ways, and they would actually steal your material. I mean, they're rare, but I've heard of it happening. And so you want to make sure that you have an attorney send it out, so that if something like that happens, it's traceable and you're protected.
Guys, I want to move on to the next slide. But did we finish covering everything on here as far as like what else do development execs look for in a project? I mean, do you have to say?
I think the one thing there was another question that was on the chat that was like, how do you pick up a piece of IP or option it? And I think the other thing I would add is, don't ever write a script based on something else that you don't have the rights to. I've seen that. I mean, Tim and John, you guys have probably seen that. It's like, don't ever send a script to me or to anybody, with Spider-Man or Batman or, even, I'm trying to think of an obscure character, an obscure character from some other movie. Like, you can't do that. So you got to make sure you have those rights. And if you need to go get the underlying rights, then you need to go get the underlying rights to that book, to that book or that comic book or graphic novel. Just, go get them. And you can get them for, as little as, $100. So it's not like it's always going to be thousands of dollars. There is a way to go out and get IP rights to certain things, for relatively, relatively a small amount of money.
Excellent. Anything to add about what you guys look for in the project? Or should I move on?
The only thing to go on what Tim said, which is, there's something about, you can't develop people. This is a very, very collaborative business. And you can be an amazing screenwriter, but if you're, sorry, I'm going to use it. If you're an asshole and people don't want to work with you,
we recorded this.
I know. So it's in posterity now. But if you're that person that has a really hard time and can't get along with anybody, people don't want to work with you, and they may purchase this rights to your script and never want to deal with you again. So it's really collaborative. So, and one of the things that as producers and executive producers and heads of production and production executives, like, we want to work with people that we really like being with, because so much of production is to spend a lot of time, a lot of downtime, and actually a lot of time before we ever get on set. There's so much time spent where nobody's getting paid to do it, that you really want to like the team that you're working with. So if I can say something about learn to, be nice and collegial and get along is really important.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're second, third, fourth, and fifthing that one. All right. Okay, guys, should we move on? Maybe if I can get this to move. Why is this not moving? Technical difficulties. There we go. All right, we're kind of covering it as we go along. I want to be up at the top of the stack. Give me the magic words, the magic steps I can take, everybody. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, we've kind of covered it pretty extensively. Just be as appealing as possible, be in my wheelhouse, so to speak, with the material that you're trying to send. Be persistent but polite. I will never fault somebody for following up after they've submitted something, but if they, snap back if I haven't read it after 2 weeks or a month, depending on what it is, then that's going to kind of piss me off. So just be patient. Feel free to check in once a week if you want to. I will always be gracious. And that checking in will move your script further closer to the top, because I'll say, oh man, Bob over here sent me the script a month ago. I haven't looked at it. He's been so polite and he's been on top of it with following up. I've got to read the script. So that really does help. As long as
you go from that inbox, which is just so full, and you're like, oh, it's the last thing I want to do, and you don't feel bad about it, and then you go to feeling bad that you haven't read it. You're like, oh, I really got to get to it.
Totally.
Yeah,
And
it happens.
It's funny how this business is such a business of relationships, and how even if you have to say no to someone, you might have a friend who works at a different company who just in parlance has mentioned, oh, I'm really looking for this kind of thing. And you could say, look, it's a pass for us for this reason, but you should, why don't you go knock on that door? There might be an opportunity there. And so that's yet another benefit of like being easy to work with, being receptive, being open to feedback, even if it's not the feedback you were hoping to hear.
That's a great point.
That is a great point.
And
I'm glad you made it.
And I'm just, I'd like to kind of chime in and say, even, like you said, John, if it's not feedback that delights you, hey, somebody took the time to give you the feedback. Your answer is thank you so much. That's a huge compliment that they felt your material and you were worth getting back to and giving the feedback on probably how to improve something. I've stunned everyone to silence with that, I see.
No, I'm just not sure what to add.
I've put it perfectly. Okay, so we're talking about that. We've already done that. Please share mechanical stuff.
I think I would actually say again, like how, not just how do you get to the top that way. I mean, it is a great way, and patience is a virtue. And I totally understand as a writer not having the patience to wait. I get it. Like it took so long for you to write it, and you sent it out and you're looking for feedback right away. So again, the first thing I would do is never send a first draft. I think that's a really bad idea. So make sure that you've sent it internally to a really close-knit group of people that you trust, who will give you good feedback and make it better and make it better and make it better before you ever send it out. Because if it's a first draft, the chances are it's not going to be so great, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, again, knowing that you're really looking for feedback. Just because it takes us 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks to get back to you doesn't mean we don't love you and we're not thinking of you. It's just that it's possible we have 40 scripts in front of us and 4 books and 3 comic books. And I read all the time. I have scripts everywhere, and I have scripts everywhere on my iPad too. And so it's not you, it's us. So relax. And then finally, again, if it comes from an agent, a manager, an attorney, another producer, somebody that we all know, right? There's another chance that it'll get to this top of the stack or closer to the top where we would read it. So if it comes from and recommended by somebody we know, that's another really great thing. So I just wanted to pass that on.
And Randy, I love how you said, be patient and wait, because a lot of the times,
it's hard.
It's great that preach.
Hard.
But also the fact that you're like, hey, sometimes that's all you can do is wait, and to just recognize the value of that statement, because we always feel like we want to be doing something. And hello, that's kind of the title of our panel today. What can I do while I'm sitting here? Because I don't need to see season 10 of something over again.
This is a hurry up and wait business at every single moment. And my wife is a writer, a children's author, illustrator, and a writer. And I live with it every day, so I get it. I totally get where you're all coming from.
Love it. Okay, guys, we're jumping into middle and late development. So we've looked at some of the early things about, how to get your script up there, how to, be patient, ways to kind of get so people know you're a good person with the, you know, persistence and researching the company. Obviously, that's a practical action step. We're going to talk a little bit more of those towards the end. Okay, middle late development. So they've got the script, they've liked it. We're working on the rewrite and the polish, and okay, then what? Walk me through some of this, you guys.
It's more waiting.
I'm gonna mute you. I'm muting you.
Rewrite, you know, at that point, I'm probably going out and I'm making offers to talent or directors, and it's taking a week at least to hear back from each one of them. And you can only go out to one actor for one role at a time. And you might be going to multiple actors for different roles, but you can only go out to one person at one time. Same thing with directors. You might be, you know, calling agents and getting, or managers, and getting ideas for directors for a certain project, and, you know, having calls with potential directors and sifting through them and trying to make decisions there. And the writer, I think, I like to involve the writer as much as possible and keep them up to date. But this after you've done a rewrite and a polish, it's kind of more waiting, and you know, you might schedule kind of update calls just to talk to the exec and find out what's going on, what's next. But yeah.
And is this a point when you might also be wanting to talk with, you know, my fabulous marketing men sitting here just being strong silent types for the moment? Is that a time when you could start, you know, branching out with other, you know, sections of the company to be doing something proactive?
Well, you know, from a studio greenlight perspective, you know, at least the process that I've sort of been involved with, it's, you know, you have to get all the key like decision makers within the organization together in a room, and then usually the filmmaker and or development exec will pitch the project to this room full of the sort of the heads of each state, so to speak. So you need to be prepared to understand, you know, as much as you can, like not only like what this, you know, is this a theatrical movie? Is it a streaming opportunity? Is it a TV series? And how does that manifest itself across the different businesses? So for licensing and merchandising, maybe it's a kids property. Those kids properties tend to lend themselves to a lot of opportunities for licensing and merch. So you might want to have a sort of a general sort of bullet point or understanding of that. Then you also want to understand, does this IP or this story have international appeal? And so when the person from international sales and distribution is in the room, they can either be like, yeah, that's a good point, or yeah, you're right. For us, it's not the right thing, but you know, it might still work because of all these other factors. So I think it's trying to think of all the different, so it's marketing, it's production, it's international sales, theatrical, it's licensing, it's all those things.
Yeah, and really the production execs never really want to get into that green light room and get turned down. So in reality, if they're doing their jobs correctly, they've been talking to the marketing people and the home entertainment people and the television people about what they're looking at doing. So that way, when they get to the room, they're not, you know, blindsided by the television guys, you know, television group saying, we can't sell that. Because then, you know, a third of the money just went out the door, and, you know, and 6 months, 10 months worth of work just went out the door. So, so that happens, you know, that happens a lot. I think, you know, as part of this process as well, one of the things as writers that you can do while you're home is you've got your script and you're ready to send it out, except you're not, right? Because you're going to send it around to your trusty team that's going to give you notes to make it better and make it better and make it better before you send it out. But one of the other things to do is and I know a manager at Haven Entertainment actually tells this to all of her clients. You need to learn how to do a Prezi or you know, or PowerPoint or whatever. You need to put together a really great presentation that's not 50 pages, that's like 8, 10. That's all about the look, feel of your project, that gives it its shorthanded visual textual deck that the production executive, who has no time ever, and even less time now that he or she is home, because they're at home also teaching their kids, you know, second grade and third grade, that, you know, they need to be able to shorthand know, like, what is this project? And by the way, it's a great trailer, if you will, before the person actually reads the script. Because when you start reading the script, if there's no context to the script, you spend 20 minutes trying to figure out, is this a comedy? Is it a drama? Is it, you know, wait, we don't do comedy dramas. Like, we're in action. Wait, it's supposed to be action and it's not. And so it's a really great opportunity for you to give to, it's also part of your personality, but it's part of you. It's a marketing point for you to be able to market your script, whether it's television show or a film is irrelevant. It's to that production executive you're sending it to. Because in the end, that production executive doesn't say yes, right? Their job is, they get paid to say no, because saying no doesn't cost millions of dollars. Saying yes costs millions of dollars. So the more you give them, and that's not 750 pages for a 1 hour movie, that's, you know, that's more information, more contextualized information that executive can then take to their boss and their boss's boss. Because in the end, when they say yes, their ass is on the line. They get fired. They don't get fired for saying no. Nobody gets fired for saying no. They get fired for saying yes. So the better material you can give them, the more material you can give them that helps sell the project up, the better off you are.
So to clarify, you're talking about like either a lookbook or some sort of a pitch deck.
Yep.
Maybe you've got
all of it.
Okay.
I mean, I've even seen what's called a rip-o-matic, which is someone paid a video editor to pull scenes from different movies that sort of give you a mood of it. So it's almost like a fake trailer. And sometimes you see those on YouTube even, where people make a fake trailer for Batman or something like that.
Yeah,
I've seen filmmakers go out and actually make literally shoot 30 seconds themselves and edit it together with chyrons to give you really tone and feeling of where you're at. And that goes a long way too.
And Randy and just to jump in on my question on that. So, you know, if I want to pull some clips and do a little bit of narration, and I'm just going to do it on iMovie, you know, because I don't want to figure out some massive program. Right. Is that good enough?
Sure.
Or, you know, am I, you know?
Sure. Just make sure it's at a good quality that you can present it in 1080 or 4K. Just because ultimately somebody's going to, you know, you're going to send it to somebody's phone. They're going to then blast it to their boss on their phone. And then their boss is going to put it up on the big screen, you know, and mirroring it on their big screen at home. So just make sure that it can take that.
But this has to be presentable enough to show that you have good taste. Like if it looks like you have bad taste, I'm going to look at that pitch deck and I'm going to say, oh man, how good is this script going to be if this pitch deck?
That's true. That's a good point.
But it's definitely worth the effort. I mean, it's interesting in this field that we're in. I mean, everything is so visual, you know, and very often we have a lot of writers on here and you're thinking, oh, my writing and the words should kind of convey it. But, you know, that means you have to go through and read an entire script. And some people don't have that time. So they're going to look at the mood boards, the lookbooks, the rip-o-matics. And that goes a long way. And particularly with Tim saying, it has to be done well, but it actually helps sell the film when it's done well, or the TV project or the digital series or whatever you have.
And I have to say, I had this experience where there was this sort of relatively well-known director who everyone was supposed to go to this pitch presentation where he was going to do this whole dog and pony show and show potential buyers and potential producers and financiers like, okay, this is my vision for the movie. And no one really coached him in the right way. And people went in thinking it was going to be a feeding frenzy and people were going to be clamoring to buy the movie. And the presentation was so terrible, even though the script was good and the premise was good, that the project died after that. It just died because the presentation was just that bad. So not to spook you, but presentation is so important and having a good flow. And maybe you're not the best person to present. Maybe there's a partner who presents and you just have to admit that. Like, I'm not a great, like, I'm good at this, but maybe someone else is the better spokesperson.
Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing a question over here about, you know, somebody said, hey man, who creates the pitch decks? Who can I reach out to? And Michael, I know we've had excellent success reaching out to the junior editors at like Mob Scene, Ignition, the companies that make trailers for the studios. And I know we've had the opportunity, where you're going like, hey, you're getting one of the junior editors who's going to be able to do it for a much more indie-friendly price, yet, oh boy, it looks good. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that one? Because I love that practical question. I want to do this, but how do I do this?
Yeah, literally, if you are for anyone to do, like any trailer house that does AV, they will do a Ripple-matic. If there's any agency out there, that does social, that does digital, that does print materials, they do decks too. And they know, they do that all on the side. It's not the stuff that it's not necessarily the bread and butter, but they all do it. There's just hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands. They don't necessarily, it's interesting, they won't necessarily say they do it. You just have to kind of ask them. Or like, maybe you do a quick Google search, they do it, but there's a ton in LA.
Yeah, there's a bunch. There's a lot of freelancers that do that, and maybe you can get somebody to do it for free, and and attach them as a co-producer. I don't know, or they get, be creative.
There are,
be creative. The world is changing as we speak. Be creative.
Who does it a lot too, or a lot of, like, if you want to look for a decks, like talk to former studio marketers.
Yeah,
they're so used to it, they have to do them all the time. Just talk to a studio marketer, they'll be glad to do it.
Okay, guys, I'm doing a quick shout out. Dan Heel is here from Way to Blue. Hey, Dan. He's telling us in the chat, hey, we can help with pitch decks at Way to Blue. Woo woo, they're here.
Hey, Dan, I know your boss.
I love it. See, I love the community we have showing up right now. We've got
it's a small world.
We've got writers, we got everybody showing up saying, what can I do? I want to get up tomorrow with a positive thing to be looking forward to working on, Okay, let me check. Where are we on the sharing screen? Come on, share screen. Who put me in charge of tech? Okay, so all right, so we're looking at the acquisition. We're looking at the process. Again, kind of mixing it up. What can we do when at home? Okay, so then at what point do you have the right script to attach talent? And with my 2 question marks, when does development end? Oh.
So I can tell you just quickly on the Meg, right? That project was in development for 21 years. So, sometimes you don't know until you know. But what ultimately became the right project and the right script, it had a really good script finally. It had a Chinese co-production company. It had Chinese money. It had Chinese distribution, and it had enough going for it that a studio said yes. But that was after, I don't know how many millions of dollars Disney spent and New Line spent writing scripts that never went anywhere. And then Belle Avery wound up with the rights, getting the rights directly from the author of the book, and then wrote a script. She wrote 2 drafts of the script herself, and it goes on. But it got far enough along that a studio was willing to say, okay, we want in now. There was no director, there was no actor. And then a director was put on who wound up coming up with production design, but then that director was let go. Another director came on, and then finally an actor came on. It's a process. Tim, you deal with this all the time. It's a process. At some point in time, there's a feeling that the script is ready to go. And then you can attach a director who the actors want to, trust.
Exactly. It's kind of a chicken and the egg problem,
right?
When it comes to the actors and directors, you might need to attach a director that's going to bring the talent on for the type of project that you're trying to put together, or you might need to get an actor that's going to attach the right kind of director. And it's hard to know what the right direction is to take. And sometimes you do both simultaneously. And like you said, Randy, it's just, there's a certain point where it kind of comes together. And unfortunately, sometimes it never does.
Right.
Look at Silence is a crazy example. You had Martin Scorsese, it's his passion project. He's one of the most renowned directors in the world. And it sat in development hell for 22 years until it finally made its way to the screen. And that's Martin Scorsese. Like, if he's going to be stuck for 20 years on a project, then, you know, how much hope do the rest of us have? But actually, I'm actually a very positive guy. I think very positively about the development process, but there are those outliner situations.
Everything has its own time.
Exactly.
I mean, really, you can't force it. I mean, everybody wants to force it because we're all freelancers and none of us get paid until something goes and it's greenlit. So aside from those of you that actually have day jobs or studio jobs where you're getting paid every other couple of weeks, and some of us are, you know, recently pandemically unemployed. So, but I think that everything, you know, and as producers, we look at projects like sometimes just a project just isn't ready. No matter how much we want it, we've worked on it for the last 9 months, and we've put time and effort and spent money against it, and, you know, in drafts and drafts and meetings, and you even put a director on it for 4 months and paid a holding fee, and it still doesn't work. It just is, something's not right. And you have to take it and you got to put it back on the shelf, and you got to take out something else and focus on that.
I have a quick kind of follow-up question. Todd Olson was saying in the chat, hey, Todd, he's with Highland Film Group, and he was saying that they sometimes will use—
Hey, Todd.
Right? He's going to be on our next panel. Randy, you were already signing up, I can tell. But so he was saying that they use Ripomatics when they're really good as a part of doing pre-sales.
Yep.
And so, okay, note to self, these things are even more useful than I thought. You know?
As I said, filmmakers who put together really great Ripomatics are doing the marketing and the sales function for their baby, and the sales and distribution and sales people are just like, this is great, this is what we want. We'll just put our logo in front. We'll, you know, and we'll use it.
Yeah, we've used it a lot in pitching, you know, particularly when you're trying to sell it off, or even just internally trying to get an understanding of like, how do you want to market this?
Yeah.
At least eventually gives you that idea of like, okay, what are the cadence, you know, who's that target audience going to be, and what are the emotions that you're going to get with it?
Well, and you know what's the fun you can have with Ripomatics, which you can't have with like a normal trailer, is that you don't have to pay music licensing fees really, because it's not, I mean, I don't know if that's official, but like I've seen a lot of Ripomatics that hilariously use like score from like, you know, Inception, that's just or Sicario, that just has like really impactful. And of course, everyone watching it knows that like, well, of course, if we make this movie, we'll have to create a new score.
Right.
But it gives you the sense of motif, and you get to kind of piggyback off of that built-in feel to help amplify the sell. So
you know, and I think,
I don't know how copacetic it is from a legal standpoint to do it.
It's
as long as it's not put out there publicly. You know, as long as it's on your private iPad and you're showing it, or a secure link. If you put it on YouTube for all to see, that's where it becomes a problem. So don't put it on YouTube. Just keep it on your Vimeo private link, you know, with the password, and then send it out to all the people that you know. But then you'll be okay with it.
I wanted to get one more clarification about the Ripomatics. So since it's possible to use them for foreign pre-sales and et cetera, is that also a good marketing tool to take to the actors, whether they're the one actually in the Ripomatic, you know, surprise, you're doing my movie, or, you know, whether they're in the Ripo or not, is that a good marketing tool to attract the talent and or the director?
Can be. Again, it all depends on how good it is.
Yeah, well, presuming
most of the time we probably collectively, the group probably wouldn't use it. For the most part, 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 times, you're probably not using what the writer is going to give you, unless it's spot on. And or you might use it as a base and add to it and make it slightly different. But most of the time, you're probably going out and creating your own, unless and Todd Olson's correct. I mean, unless the director is doing it, which is, you know, really great.
Excellent. Okay, let's check our next slide, y'all. I love all these great things we're learning. All right, I'm sharing. Okay, so development, we know it ends when it ends, you know? Okay, and marketing, we've been talking about this a bit. When do you get marketing and distribution involved, and why? And
Early on.
Yeah, woohoo! Yeah, unmute Michael, unmute him.
No, I think we'll kind of keep this short because I know for time wise, but there's two things to note is just harking back to what was talked about earlier about like the way the studios work, you know, with marketing and production versus just how you as an independent filmmaker, director, writer work. And I'll just address the first one quickly. Is very often, unfortunately, in a lot of studios, there's like a separation of church and state between production and marketing distribution. Not all places, you know, virtually where I'm at MGM, you'll have production actually talk to marketing distribution a lot, which helps out because then they'll get the feedback of, you know, how do we make it more marketable? You know, it's like, what is the thoughts about the title? What are the thoughts about talent, you know, you want to attach to it? But, you know, for a lot of those on the call, you're not in the studio system per se, you know, so then you're like, okay, so how do I get marketing involved to kind of get that feedback? I think what it is very often talking to, like, and you've heard some of the panelists talk about it, talking to your friends who maybe are in marketing, you know, that can give you feedback of how do you make this more, because the role of marketing, and this is what I tell everyone again, is like, it's to make your project more commercial, therefore more successful, therefore then when it does successful, you can make another one, you know, and keep on doing it. The hardest part is that if it doesn't do well, because you weren't listening to all that, then very often you're not going to get that, be able to do in the next project per se. So if you're able to get feedback on, you know, who do you think the target market's going to be? I think what helps out a lot too is to really seriously look at what is your TV show, what is your film, what are those comparative titles? Who do you think it will be? Because very often I will be asked by an independent filmmaker saying, I think this is going to be the next Jason Bourne. And I was like, okay, well, who do you see attaching to it? And they said, well, you know, they're not going to have a big star attached to it. Well, then it's going to be hard to kind of hit that box office unless you get like a Matt Damon and so attached to it. You know, then you have to kind of look at this next level of type of films of what is it going to be from a market perspective and a box office or a ratings perspective that you're going to be getting. The earlier that you can get that feedback on, you know, everything from just from the ideation or even from the script, the better it is, because then when you are actually then pitching it, you know, you're able to kind of explain who that target market is and the people who you're pitching to understand exactly what you're going after. Another side note, just so you're aware too, is that it's interesting, there are companies out there like, I know like AI, like they do AI, like The Vault does this, where they will actually, it's really interesting, they will actually ingest your script into their algorithm and pull out those key themes that resonate with certain target audiences. And some will actually even tell you, like, you know, you can take it with a grain of salt, but will actually tell you like how much it can make in a box office perspective, or even from a TV show, you know, and they actually do that for like the streamers. They actually do that for the studios. And in that way, what they do is they actually just give you that early feedback of like who you think that audience will be, that early feedback of the potential, the monetary potential from it. And it's better to do it then versus when you have it all locked in and then you're like, oh shit, you know, I wish I knew that, you know, before we started, you know, production. Because once you're in production, it's really harder to kind of make those big changes. I mean, it happens, but it's kind of harder to do so and a lot more expensive. Yeah.
Okay, you guys, we're hitting the end zone here, which upsets me because I want to keep learning from all of you wonderful guys. Again, we kind of keep going as we go. Standard do's and don'ts. I mean, we know, okay, don't send Tim a period romance. What else are some do's and don'ts that you're like, oh, hello. So we're going to do some research. We're going to choose which executive. We're going to make that specific of a decision of who we're sending, to whom we are sending it. And including things like, hey, I think this is going to be a great one for fill in the name of the talent and or director with whom you guys work a lot already. You know, look, I've done a bit of homework on it. I know this is a good fit. Tell me more.
Don't send unsolicited material. We discussed that. Randy, what do you got?
I mean,
standard, there's the one do.
Yeah, okay.
One.
So
the Holy Grail.
The first thing, so again, I'm going to go back to what I've said now, I think 2 or 3 times. So I'm not trying to belabor the point, But what I'm trying to do is make it so you really understand. This is a business of hopes and dreams, but it is operated by people that run it as a business. And you finishing your screenplay, whether it's television, whether it's a television pilot and a Bible, or it's a feature-length script, is really great. But having one, right, is really great, but it doesn't really work for us. I want to know and work with a screenwriter that's got 3, 4, 5, 6 screenplays, because and they're on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th draft of each. Because what that means is that you don't have one idea or 2 ideas, you've got a lot of ideas, and you're willing to keep honing the idea to make it the best you could make it. It also means you're willing to take notes. It also means you're willing to put in additional hours for free, which is not what I want you to do, but it means that you're willing to go above and beyond to try to make that which you've created that much better. And if you're willing to do that,
ability to adapt and change, not being precious about your material.
Totally, absolutely. But if you're willing to do that as a writer, right? I know that I've got a partner that I can work with who's going to understand. If you don't hear from me for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it doesn't mean I'm not doing anything. It means I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing and putting in the hours, talking to people, you know, and doing Zoom calls and getting nowhere, or doing Zoom calls and getting somewhere, or talking to financiers, or talking to, executives like John and Tim, and trying to find distribution and trying to find money and trying to find all the right things, and know that I'm putting in the hours to do it, because it's a business, right? I'm not making your dream come true. I'm trying to take a project you made and make it into a property, a project, a product that gets sold. And so many times I get inundated with emails like, I sent you my script and you haven't read, just as Tim said earlier, and you haven't read it yet. And it's like, look, I'm really sorry. There's 38 scripts ahead of yours and 6 books by 3 financiers that I know, and 3 production companies that are paying me, and I have to work with my clients. I promise I'll get to it. It's just taking me some time. That's part of it.
Boss, so like when he sends me something to read, that's at the top of the stack.
Well, my boss is my wife and my kids that are out there, and and I just have to make sure that the money keeps coming in. But the other thing that you need to know, right, is that it is a business. You need to really know how to take constructive criticism, and not take it so personally, or not take it personally at all. In fact, it's even better, because in the end, all we collaboratively want to do is make the best project out of that idea and that script that you've started with. And sometimes that means you're not part of it moving forward. Sometimes you're the right writer to continue. Sometimes you need to be paired with somebody, or sometimes it's just not going to work, right? And that's just the business. That's part of this business. So you have to be realistic about what the business is, and know that no one's saying anything about you personally, or about your hopes and dreams, or about your idea. It's about your writing. And if your writing doesn't work, but the idea is good, then as producers, we want to take it and move it to somebody else that can get it moving. And as long as you're connected and you get a credit, take the ride. and try to enjoy it as best you can,
and learn as much as you can for your next.
I mean, that's
I have a quick question, Randy, because you're saying, hey, have the 5 or 6 scripts, and we were talking a bit earlier also, Tim, about franchises. So you've got the first script of the franchise, written, rewritten, written again, good God, it's good, even my mother likes it, which is saying a lot. So should I be working on the second script, the sequel, and the prequel? And
I don't think so. I think having a piece of a project that is ripe for a sequel is good. Having 3, a trilogy pre-written is presumptuous and comes off not true. And kind of a waste of time.
That's it. Yes.
When Now You See Me came to Summit, it was like, it was a standalone, but then it was clear, like one of the pluses of like, oh, this could be a franchise, but no one needed a franchise map in the way that maybe Marvel does, but that's its own sort of thing.
Right.
I've just been told we're running out of recording space, y'all. You guys hang on.
Oh, that's too bad.
You have the free version of Zoom?
To go over. When have we ever done it? Okay, we've talked about this pretty much, you guys. So items we can do, we've been talking about them throughout. Get your research done on who you need to be sending things to. Put the pitch deck together, which would also include comparative titles, which are usually within the last 5 years. Ideally, similar companies, similar target audience, similar budget ranges,
genres, yep, all of that, yeah. Exactly. Oh, sorry, Jen. Sorry, just throwing it in.
No, I was waiting for everybody else because I thought, uh-oh, they all got muted. How did I mute everybody? Anything else we want to jump on with that? We're pretty good. If you don't know that already, you haven't been listening for the last hour plus.
Yeah, I think somebody makes a really good point. Like, you want to take comparative titles, but you would be better off picking the ones that made money, the ones that didn't.
Yes.
But you shouldn't just load them with just the ones that made money. You should load them with, ones that broke even or we're close to that, because you want to be, again, you're going to be realistic.
Mm-hmm. And do we want to change those comparative titles? Like if we're sending it to Tim, if we're sending it to you, if we're sending it to Miramax,
the comparative title should be consistent. I mean, it's like whatever your project is, with a film or TV, it should be, realistic. You always set like a few that are kind of like the hopeful, this is what you hope, like a high, the ones that Randy's talking about that are more realistic. And then you'll have some that might not do as well, but it really comes down to, you want to make sure also, like for films, like if you have a PG-13 film, but then all your comparative titles are R, it's not the best way to do it. Or if you're doing genres and it's a horror film and you're putting romantic comedies, it makes no sense, so those are things you have to kind of keep in mind. But also if you do that work and that analysis, it kind of forces you in your mind to kind of realize, like, what do you have in your hand, because you've actually done that analysis and figure out, like, what's it worth.
And also there is value to understanding the bad comps, because someone across the table from you will reference the bad comps, and you need to be able to explain why your movie is not the bad comp.
Right. Really important. Yeah. And Martha Cotton, who was one of our people here, just wrote a really, really smart thing. We have to think like producers. That's it. You got to think like a producer. You got to get out of your writer head and think like a producer, because that's, everybody has to think for all the people that come next. Like the marketing people don't want to be told what to do, so they don't want you to come up with a one sheet in the trailer, but but it's for you to have in something that looks like that and feels like that, so that they can then have something to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you guys, awesome. Since I got the 5-minute wave a few moments ago, we got 2 things left, and this is where I go, this is what I forgot to put in the chat, y'all. Hey, shout out to Final Draft, woo-woo! Yeah, awesome people. Sadie's, I believe, online today with us. Sadie, hey! Almost seeing you in person, love it. Guys, guess what? We have a survey, we want you to take it. Michael, I'm dying here, I forgot to pull the link up. Do you have the link, Andy? Embarrassing. I'm so embarrassed. This is where everybody goes, don't do anything else with Jen because she's unprepared. We thought she was good.
I'll find it.
So we're going to take a survey. Let us know how we do with that. We're going to put that up in the chat room momentarily. And we're giving away 2 full downloads of Final Draft, 2 mobile apps to those who fill in the survey. We're going to kind of, pull the name out of the hat and see who it is from the survey, you guys. So please do that, because we are looking to get sponsors involved, because, hey, we're producing, and we want to get, some people on board with that. And having this kind of quantitative data is, of course, extremely helpful, as we learned from today. So please do that. Michael, are you able to get that?
Yeah, let me put it in. I think I have the right one. We'll see.
Thank you. Yeah, I made one specifically for today. So it's coming, y'all, be patient. And of course, after that, following us here on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you're here today, you're going to get on our email list, unless you email me saying don't. But otherwise, that's me, Jennifer at beautifuldayproductions.us. And if you have something positive to say about the panel, we welcome those comments as well, and emails, everybody, because quotes are wonderful to show people as well. I'm learning to be a better producer, y'all. So we've got us there. And thank you, of course, Writers Guild Foundation. A huge shout out to Writers Guild Foundation for being amazing to us. We've been working with them now for almost a year. Woo! What a fabulous partner they are in all this.
Thanks, Dustin. Thanks, Anita.
Let me see. And then, of course, Final Draft, giving you the shout out. Michael, were you able to put that up?
Yep, it's in there.
Oh my God, I love you for so many reasons. You know, this is only one of many.
Nice.
Okay, let me see. I'm going to stop the share right now, y'all, okay? Woohoo! There he is, my partner in crime. All right, so you guys, ladies and gentlemen, a massive, massive thank you to all of you for showing up today. Let me see. We had like 300 people showing up at one point. Rock on.
Wow.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Randy. Thank you,
Yes,
Michael.
thank you, guys. Thank you.
You guys are the best. I can't wait to do this with you again and do it in person as well.